Hello and welcome to another Actio webinar, one of our monthly webinars that we do, usually asking an expert to contribute with their experience around some topic on risk management, right? And today we're going to talk about taking risk management to frontline operations. Today we have a jewel of the house, let's say, to talk to us, someone from within Actio, and that has a lot of experience as innovation consultant, going through many clients and implementing our software and guiding our clients into how to use best the software. And this gave her the opportunity to see lots of different realities and how people or organizations do their risk management, what works and what doesn't, right? So welcome, Eyerusalem, Belew. Thank you for participating with us today.
Thank you for the opportunity, Guy.
Sure. Before we jump in, there's a few points I wanted to remind our audience here. First is that we have the community. So it's a community of professionals in risk management where we change experience, put new materials there. Other people can contribute as well with their materials, their experience, and know what's going on in risk management world. And also you can find all the past webinars in this community as well. So we're going to put here in the chat a link to the community. It's already there. If you're not part of it yet and you want to sign up, just click on the link and you'll be able to sign up to this community where the talks continues there, right? Also, by the end of our webinar, we're going to send out a form for feedback. It's important for us to know what we're doing right and what we can improve on. So if you could please take a couple of minutes to fill in the feedback form, it's very important for us. And also, if you wish to receive a certificate of participation, we can send those out. Just fill in the form and check the appropriate box on the form, right? So today we have a limited audience. So I'm thinking of doing something a little different from what we usually do. Usually we do a one-on-one webinar, me talking to the expert. But today we can actually open the mics and bring you guys into the talk, right? So I'm gonna, Mateus, if you could help me out with this, just open the mics in the videos so that people can open their own videos and mics if they wish to contribute here with questions, with comments. So if you have any questions, you can interrupt us and put out your questions. It's always good for us to address what you're interested in knowing, right? So Mateus is, I guess, doing this right now, opening the possibility of you sharing your camera and your audio with us, right? If for some reason you don't have access to this, just put on the chat and we're gonna figure out how to give this access to you. Well, Eyerusalem, let's jump in then. Oh, by the end of our talk, Eyerusalem has separated some minutes so that she can show in practice some of the points that we're going to be talking throughout the webinar. So opening a system and showing, what are some tricks of the trade, let's say, to get, people in the front line involved and engaged with risk management. So stay until the end and you'll see the more practical view of our talk, right? Well, Eyerusalem, you've been through many clients and seen very different realities, right? There are organizations with the most diverse levels of maturity in risk management. Organizations that are beginning, organizations that have gone through many cycles and have learned with their experience and expanded, risk management throughout the organization. Some without any culture of risk management, other with a very hardened culture and part of their day-to-day processes, right? Um, Throughout all of this experience that you've gained, could you tell us why do organizations still struggle in operation in making risk management or work despite all the investment that we see in frameworks, softwares, and governance? So we know that there is a lot of investment in that, but some organizations still struggle with it. Why? What happens in your opinion?
Okay. Thank you, Guy. So from what I've seen, from my experience, is that most organizations don't lack frameworks anymore. They already have mature governance methodologies and even dedicated teams for their risk management, right? So the challenge at this time when it comes to risk management is the operational execution, right? So they already have the governance maturity in place. Right. And when we talk about risk management, we're not just focusing on the traditional ERM. I want to focus on the integrated risk management. And this includes an operational different domains, right? Operational ecosystem. So they're interconnected. It includes like cybersecurity, compliance, operational risks, business continuity, audits, controls, and so on. Right. So the problem is not that organization they're not just focused on ERM, which is good, but they have these multiple functions. And all of these domains are currently being managed independently. They have separate systems, separate workflows, even separate reporting structure. And the way they also organize their ownership structure is also very segregated and different from one another. And when you look at it to the reality from the frontline workers, the gap is that they would have to interact with all these domains simultaneously, right? So the governance is currently centralized, but we have an issue when it comes to the execution distribution. Right? Okay. So
Okay,
when we
so
talk about the breakdowns, God, you want to add something, Kay?
yeah, so I'm imagining the frontline people there, right? Imagining someone from sales or marketing or operations or logistics. They are involved in all of these processes, like corporate risk management processes, like cyber risk management or ESG or compliance or privacy management. There are so many different demands, and they come from different departments as well, right? ESG comes from one department, cyber from IT in general. Some of these will come from internal control, others will come from risk management department. So I'm imagining the person there in the front line that has to do their job, right? That and getting all of these demands from all of these different departments. And here you're only addressing risk ecosystem, right? You're not even tackling like
Yeah.
strategy or performance or HR, people development and other corporate processes. So on top of their daily work in operations, marketing, logistics, or whatever they actually do to in their organization, they get all of these other demands, right? This is can be actually overwhelming, right?
Yes. And when we see where the operationalization actually breaks down is that if you look at their environment, it's continuously changing, right? And when it comes to risk management, that's the typical practice is that there is a periodic reporting. And also when you look at for the frontline workers, that even the escalation pathway are not clear, right? So there are like these type of gaps, and also like the mitigation execution, it typically lacks visibility.
Okay. Let me see here from our participants. Stop sharing for a minute. From our participants here, I'd like to ask you if this is the reality in your organization, right? If you see the frontline people getting an overwhelming amount of demands from corporate processes, risk management being one of them. Let me get some volunteers here. Do you have, could anyone volunteer in bringing your experience into the talk here? If you feel that frontline managers are getting overwhelmed with different demands from corporate, maybe Bonifaci, are you there? Could you help us out in this view? Or let's keep going. So, Jerusalem, um, okay, so they do have a hard time in executing operationally, right? But in executing risk management in the front line. But why? What makes it difficult to take it to the front line and engage these people?
So when we take a look at the frontline workers, the operational reality is that the environment is dynamic and most conditions change continuously, right? And when you look at the operation teams, it moves faster, but the governance cycles is typically slower, right? It cannot keep up with it. And for government workers, for frontline workers, they have to interact with the controls, incidents, compliance, audits, so continuity activities, like different requests from different departments, as you mentioned, right? And how it is currently is that it is separate. They use separate process and has a completely different workflows. Right, so this would require them to create a multiple reporting. They would have like different ownership structure, right? And this could also create a disconnect when it comes to the escalation mechanism, and which could make it like cumbersome and confusing for frontline workers. So which makes the risk management work to be actually put to the side if it's not clear, and this would eventually reduce engagement of the employees in the risk management process, right?
Yeah.
And
So
also,
go ahead.
oh, okay, just wanted to highlight additional some operational frictions that is typically created. So when you have like too many disconnected processes, the reporting is also going to become cumbersome for the frontline workers, right? And they also lack visibility on the outcome. Okay, we're saying that you have to escalate issues, but they are not going to see the decisions and the organizational impact, right? And this is also one thing that creates a decline in engagement.
Okay. Yeah, I've witnessed this a few times, and I think it's been getting worse and worse because especially from 2020 on, we've seen like an explosion of number of softwares that people have to interact with just to do their work, right?
Yeah.
So for each of those elements that you put up, like cybersecurity, ESG, compliance, and so on, people in the front line have to interact. When you say like with different processes, the way it reaches the front line is through systems, through softwares, right? So they end up having to interact with so many softwares that it's a hard time just keeping up with all of the softwares that they have to update or consult or um, interact with. And there is this phenomenon in the IT world of the SaaS sprawl, right? The software sprawl, or the number of softwares that people have to interact increased enormously. And I believe that this is the reflection of what you're talking about, like so many processes that they have to interact with on the day-to-day. Like they have to learn how to use these softwares, get used to the navigation in the software, and just remember what information is in each software and when do they have to update each of these. So we're talking about, tens of softwares that people interact today, right? This can be a big issue and a big hurdle for people to execute the risk management in their organizations. Do you see this when you say process, like they have to interact with so many process? You're talking about softwares, or are there other aspects of the process as well?
Uh, So when I'm referring to a process, so for these different domains, they can have different workflows, right? So from the softwares are one way of digitalizing the process, and it's actually trying to make the work simpler for the frontline workers. But the problem is that it could actually create more problems, right? Instead of streamlining their process. So even like when we're talking about like one of the domains, like they would have to be like they would have to report, they would have to execute activities, right? And then they need to give visibility, right? So when they're doing all of this, like application is one way of supporting their process. But in general, they have to be involved, like even if it's they're just using a spreadsheet or PowerPoint, right? So they're expected to engage in different workflows, which are disconnected from one another.
Okay, I think you have a slide on that, right? Let me try to put it up for you. So,
Yeah. So if we just take a closer look to one of the domains, the enterprise risk management, we understand that outside the risk management department, it involves a different stakeholders or different departments, right? So we have like the top management and also like the frontline workers, and each one of them has key roles that they play at different stage of the risk management process, right? So top management might be involved in just defining the risk appetite and the strategic priorities. They could be involved in making decisions. But when it comes to defining the methodologies, centralizing the risk, defining controls, it's typically the risk management department's role. But when it comes to the actual execution, for the mitigation plans, monitoring the controls, or even identifying risks, it usually falls on the frontline workers, right? So it's we'd say that we're going to use a tool for risk management, but it has to be something that is user friendly, and that is also accessible to frontline workers. That should make their job easier, not just the risk management departments, right? So when you talk about the workflows and the system, like it has to be something that takes them into consideration.
okay. So out of all of those elements in the ecosystem of risk management that you presented, you zoomed in one, and in just one, you have all of these activities that are expected from frontline people, right?
Yes,
Okay.
that is correct. So now we're
And
just talking about the ERM process here.
yeah, just focusing in ERM, and in all of those other elements in the ecosystem, we can expect something similar as well, right? Compliance or cybersecurity and so on, right?
Yes, and there could be actions that are required from the frontline workers.
Yeah, they're involved, or they should be part of this process, right? Which leads me to my next question to you. That is, how do we get these frontline employees involved and engaged in risk management? So they are there are activities in the process that are their responsibility, but how do we get them actually engaged with this, right? And make it happen and not break down when it reaches the front line.
So when we talk about engaging frontline employees in the risk management process, the goal is not to turn them into a risk specialist. The goal is to make risk management a part of the operations naturally. Okay, so there are different approach that organizations use. So it could be like a training and by actually creating risk awareness and by embedding it into the operational routines. Right. So when you talk about training employees on risk management, it's not just the framework, but how to make an operational decisions based on the risks. Right. That's one way. And the other is promoting risk reporting culture, right, which moves away from like blame-oriented environments, but actually reporting it in order to mitigate the risks. Right? So that's one way. So we just talked about this, the operational friction that employees face at this time. And one way is to simplify that process, right? Simplifying the reporting, the escalation process, making it easier for them to know if the risk arise, like what they're expected to do, right? And also when we have to reduce these administrative burden by streamlining some of the process, like even from, we are saying that we have different domains and it could be like different department managing that, but right? And the other thing is actually we have to improve visibility for them as well, not just for management, but employees needs to have visibility on outcomes. They have escalated a problem, but they need to know the decision, and also mitigating the progress on the mitigation actions for the risk that they have raised. It would also advise to give them visibility on the organizational impact, right? So you say that we have this risk, but if this risk materialize, where is it going to affect, right? So how is it going to impact the organizations? So this is one way of increasing the participation of frontline employees when in the risk management process.
There's so many points I'd like to comment on your answer, but I'll get this last one first, right? The impact. So this is something that I believe a lot. It makes a lot of difference. People knowing why they are doing things, right? And why that's important. On your experience, when you look at risk management in organizations, do organizations connect the risk that is being treated by the frontline or reported or controlled or mitigated by the frontline people with the impact in the strategy or in the performance or the company? Is there this connection, or are they asked to do all of this, identify, mitigate, control, assess risks without knowing the full impact or why that is relevant for the organizations? Is there a connect between risk management, execution, and strategy and performance execution to give this visibility? What's your experience on that?
So in Actio, we have integrated platform, right, for strategy and risk. So I get a chance to speak to both strategy professionals and risk professionals. When it comes to the risk professionals, they want to make sure that it is integrated with the corporate strategy, right? They want to make sure that risk discussion becomes part of the strategy conversation in the organizations. But what they're currently struggling is that to make sure that even though that they have identified risk from the organization strategy, but they struggle to actually embed it in the day-to-day conversation, right? So the plans, like of course, like when they start mapping the risks, they start with the organization impact, but they struggle when it comes to the execution. right? So it ends up becoming risk reporting, and that's actually one of the reasons that they come to us, or they choose Actio when they see that, okay, like if I'm able to directly link my risk to like the risk that was mapped in the organization, the risk register to the organization strategy. That's one way of making sure that like management takes a closer look at these risks when they are assessing their performance.
Okay. And what about training? It was the first thing that you mentioned, right? And how to get the frontline involved and engaged. This training, is is it something that is routinely done, or is it a one-shot training? And does it evolve throughout the organization's maturity in risk management? Um, so let me try to reformulate my question to you. Uh, I imagine that the organizations evolve, right, in maturity. So once they are implementing an ERM system, for example, I imagine they will have a very basic level of training. You know, what is a risk? What is a risk that you should report? Or why is it important for you to establish controls on risks? So very basic, training. And does this training evolve as the company evolves in its maturity in risk management? Or what is expected from the front line is basically static?
So when we speak to the risk management professionals, that's how they would imagine the process to be. So as the maturity grows, they would want to make sure that risk awareness is embedded in the operational routines, but there is a disconnect with what is ideal and what's in practice. Right. So the training is one part of it. They have some organizations, especially more mature they are, they try to have this routine trainings, but typically, what happens is that it just gets to be like to sit on the side. Even the risk management is just something that sits on the shelf and something that gets reported like periodically.
Okay. All right. And how can an integrated solution then or a platform support risk management? Because we've seen we talked about the software sprawl, right? The amount of softwares that people have to interact with just to do their work, right? Um, how can this be better, right?
Okay. So we've seen that like risks rarely stays isolated, right? So one disruption is going to affect multiple domains, right? If we're seeing that, let's say there is a disruption in supply chain, it can have an impact on projects and operations or and even the business continuity, right? So we're touching like different domains with just one disruption. So it is important that we have an integrated solution for managing our risks. So what we have is so we have a system that integrates risks, controls, audits, and even like operational actions into one platform. Not just that, but even with a corporate strategy and corporate performance, right? So this is one way of eliminating the fragmentation and creating visibility across different domains, right? So we're trying to connect like, okay, if there's like a risk arise, like we have that risk, but does it have a control? Oh, okay, how's the control effectiveness? Is there a control finding around that area? Is there an incident that has been reported? What are the status of the mitigation actions, right? And also, are there indicators that are deteriorating? So these are the items that you want to see connected.
Okay. And can you show us in practice how this works?
Okay, sure. So I'll show you how this works in our platform.
Okay.
Okay. So
Okay, while she's sharing her screen with us, I remind you that if you have any questions or comments, you can put on the chat in the side menu, and we're gonna try to address the questions throughout the webinar, or at the end if we can't get to all the questions. We see your screen already.
Okay,
Yes.
you see my screen? Great. Okay, so as I mentioned, that we've been talking about having a fragmented process and moving away from that and going for one centralized solution, right? So we talked about in risk management, we have different domains, right? And put the idea is that bringing them together, but not just within risk management, but we're trying to bring risk management and corporate performance together, because the idea is that you wanted to make risk management part of the corporate performance discussions, right? So what you're looking at right now is a strategic map, right? So this one is in a balanced scorecard framework. It is interactive and it's real-time data, right? So, and even at a glance, I'm able to see where I stand in terms of achieving my objectives, right? The red shows me that where there is a gap, the yellow one shows that where I am off track in terms of my goals, and green shows where things are going according to plan, right? So these are my objectives, right? As I said, this is interactive. So if I want to do a deep dive analysis, understand the cause behind the deviation in this performance, I can do that. I'm going to open and see the relationship. Okay. So I have add value to shareholder strategic objective. Okay, these are the two indicators behind this objective, right? EBITDA margin and EBITDA. And I have projects integrated, these strategic initiatives associated to it, and also a risk here, right? So now I understand that, okay, I have one risk that could have an impact on my objective here, right? So, and okay, what has been my last risk evaluation? Okay, I can see that it's high, right? So it's high, but then I have controls implemented, and I was able to minimize it from my risk exposure from high to low, right? And I can see what those risk controls are and see the effectiveness of my controls, right? And then the status of my mitigation actions. Okay. So this is one way of embedding our risk management into our performance management process. And for top management, it's not just about reporting like we have this many risks, right? They want to see, okay, which risk is going to impact which objective and how is that doing, right? What is the risk exposure level like? So those are the type of visibility that we want to create for management. So as I mentioned, risk is one of the things that we wanted to integrate, but when it comes to performance management, we have the indicators, we have in projects here, and also for my projects, I can also see if there is a risk exposure, right? Are there any risk linked to it? Okay, so I'm opening, so I started by opening my initiatives. I saw like, okay, I have these two programs, I have this solid waste management project, and I have like these many risks connected to my project, which is solid waste management, right? So not just strategic risks, but I'm now looking at my project's risks. Okay. And for each one of them, I could see like who the owner is. All right, so this one is for management. Right now, we're talking about today. Actually, we're focusing on the frontline workers. Right, so making things simpler for them. So let's go to our risk management solution. Right, I'm going there. Right, so this what you're looking at currently is an individual dashboard. This is a personalized workspace for the user. Right, so when I open this, I'm able to see how many risks that I own. Okay. What are like any pending reviews that I have to do for my controls? Is there any pending validation? Okay, how many mitigation actions do I have? And are they delayed? I can see the status here, right? So we're saying that these frontline workers would have actions to execute from different domains. And the idea is that to bring all the actions together and make it simpler for them, right? So they know what they have to do. They know what they have to act on, right? So from this screen, I know that I have 13 risks, and the calendar shows me, okay, the important dates, right? Okay, here, this is the day that I have to do my control reviews. If I highlight here, okay, this is where I need to do my risk review for this specific customer defaults risk, right? So even the calendar highlights what I need to do by when. Right, so let's take a look at what the risks that I'm responsible for. So I saw that I have 13. So if I open them, I get to see the list and also the degree of my risk exposure. Okay, so let's deep dive into one of the risks. So here I have cash deficit as being one of the risks that I'm responsible for. So let's do a further analysis, right? So you're seeing here is that my most recent risk evaluation, okay, it was low, but on the right side, I see the risk evolution. Throughout time, how has my risk has evolved, right? So I see that it's been high at certain points, but now things are under control and it's low. And okay, this is where we register the basic information about my risk, right? The areas that it's under, like what kind of risk matrix that I want to use. I want to measure it. If there's like any taxonomies that we want to use, that we can add the risk type, like any type of categorization, we can do that here. Okay. And okay, once I identify my risk, okay, this is where I can do my risk analysis. What you're looking at currently is this bow tie analysis where I have my causes on one side and my potential consequences on the right side. And it's even linked to the controls, right? The left side shows me my corrective controls. And the right side shows me this is the corrective and this one's the preventive controls, right? So I'm able to do this type of differentiation here in the bow tie analysis. And when it comes to mapping my causes and consequences, we have an AI embedded, right? So the idea is that, as I said, it's not to make everyone a risk expert, but to guide them in the process and make it simpler for them to get engaged in the process, right? So here we have an AI to support our team in mapping their causes, consequences, and also controls, right? So everywhere you see this icon, like map causes, that's where you can add, get support from AI to recommend potential causes. Right? So that's one of it. And what makes it different from actually using other AI tools is that this is a company-specific AI that's going to be trained on your company information, right? It could be like your past performance, SOPs, any materials that you want the AI to be trained on, it can use that, and also all the data in the software, right? Because if you want to use ChatGPT, you have to give it enough context in order to get very personalized and accurate or relevant outputs. Right, but in this case, that you don't have to do that. So like it's going to be trained on your company information, and all the data in the software is going to be included here. Okay, so this would make it so much easier for the frontline workers who would have to execute the risks. All right, so that's where I have my cause and consequences, and here are my controls. So for my controls, I can set the effectiveness, which would have an impact on the residual risk, right? So you have your initial analysis, but you can also create your controls, set the effectiveness, and then you can track that periodically, or you can set that, okay, this is something that needs to be monitored every month, every quarter, and you can make sure that your team is involved in the process, right? So the tool is going to send like notifications and emails to bring them here to make sure that they complete whatever needs to be executed by that time. This is on your risk analysis. Okay, let's come to the evaluation. right? So we're saying that risk, it's not a static report, it's dynamic. So we would have to evaluate it all the time, right? So this is one way of completing your risk evaluation. So I see that over time, this has how my risk has evolved, but I can come and create my current risk evaluation, right? Because things can change a lot. And here I'm adding the impacts, and it's going to show me the aggregative impact here, severity, and also I can add the probability, right? This is where I do my evaluation. Okay. And I have also attached or linked this risk to many controls, and these controls have set them to have an effective certain type of effectiveness. So it's going to help me identify what my residual risk score is like, right? So now from very high and high, it has come down to low and average, right? This is due to the control, the effectiveness of my controls. So once I'm done, I'm going to save my evaluation. All right, so now we have created new risk evaluation. Right, so okay, we said that we have done our risk analysis. We have set our controls, right? But then we still need to do our mitigation plans, right? So let's see how we can create that. So this is just a simple action chart. You can see that this is a Gantt chart. Sorry, I don't have good data here. But the idea is that you can create your mitigation actions here and have assign them to a responsible person. So each action is going to have a responsible person attached to it, and you can see whether that it's completed, whether it's progressing or even delayed from this tool. All right, so when you look at what I showed you earlier, the individual dashboard, that actually brings things together for the user, right? So when Guilherme go into this tool, he's going to see, okay, for this risk, he has to execute these two mitigation actions. And he can also be responsible for executing mitigation action from another risk, right? Or even it could be an audit, right? And it's already integrated here in the software. So a person who's going to go into the software, like they're going to get, they will know what they have to do immediately. Right? Okay, so this is a mitigation action. We have it in a Gantt chart and also Kanban view. This is to make it more digestible for the users. Right. And okay, we're saying that despite doing all of this, a risk can still occur. So this is where we can register the risk events, right? So I could add, okay, what happened here, who's responsible, okay, what was the actual cause for this risk event, and what was the consequence, right? And also after that, I can create a contingency plan and also create corrective actions here, right? And then assign it to a person. So if you see, at different areas, like we're creating different action plans, we're assigning different people, right? And it's easier for people for things to fall through the crack and not be able to be on top of things because they're going to have to engage with different domains. But this is one way of bringing all the data together for them and make sure that we achieve the results that we want. All right, so this is in terms of the risk management for final users, right? I'm going to save this. And just wanted to show you a few more things before I go. So when it comes to the risk management department, they're the ones who would be creating the risk structure, the taxonomies and everything. So and they would want to get a consolidated view, right? So this is where they can have that. So this section, what you see as an impacted items is that where we have the risk consolidated, could be like in terms of contracts, processes, or even technology, right? This is where you could say, okay, this is how I wanted to structure my risks, right? I wanted to get a consolidated view in this manner. So you can see that here. So when it comes to a process that I've seen that overall, we have a combined score of 294. If we break that down further into compliance, environmental risk, I can see which one has the most risk exposure, right? From this breakdown, it shows that environmental management has the most risk exposure. And if I can break down further, like, and get to identify the sub process, right? And then if I open that, it's going to show me which risk they are. So if I open here relationship, okay, I'm saying for chemical waste management, I have these 4 risks. So this is very important when we come for the risk department, risk management department, and also top management, right? Because that's how they can see, okay, get a consolidated view of where the organization stands in terms of its risk exposure. Okay. And just, okay, we have only 10 more minutes before we go. I just wanted to show you one last thing. So this is dashboard. Okay. Right. So we have all the data in the software, but we wanted to create a consolidated view across our risks, controls, mitigation plans, right? So this is where you have like your risk matrix. You have on the left side the inherent risk and the right side the residual risks, right? This is interactive. If I click, I'm going to be able to see, okay, what those risks are here at the bottom. Okay, and I can create different kind of risk analysis that shows me which process has the most risk exposure. This one is also interactive. I can add my qualitative reports, right? And when it comes to reporting to management, right? And every time if there are any critical risks that I wanted to closely monitor, I can bring them here, so have like a summary of how the risk is doing, right? So in terms of financial management, I have 2 risks that I wanted to closely monitor, right? I see that, okay, this is the risk level, mitigation action, there is 50% delayed, and this is the risk control I have, right? And not just that, but I see the status of my mitigation actions, all right, and also see like who's responsible, and so on. So the idea is that, okay, for frontline workers, like they would want to see into detail all the things that they would have to, that what's expected of them, what they need to complete. But for management, you wanted to give them a consolidated view. At the same time, highlights what's important and make sure that when you give them a report, it's not just separately like a risk management report, like, but have them integrated and connected to the organization's strategy, and make sure that you have a discussion or like your meetings is simultaneously integrated with strategy. Okay. All right. I think in the interest of time, I'll stop here. Okay. Do you have any questions for me?
No, thank you very much, Ruslan. I'd just like to remind our audience here to fill in the forms, the feedback forms. It's always helpful for us to improve on our webinars. Thank you very much for your participation, Jerusalem, and sharing with us your experience across, many industries and many companies that you've been with. And well, see you next time. Thank you all for participating.
Right. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for taking the time to be with us. I hope you found it insightful.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.